listen to me now. Like, you have to do it your own way. Otherwise, you're going to end up in somebody else's version of success.
Welcome to the Chillpreneur Podcast.
Jazz. Welcome officially to the Chillpreneur Podcast.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm just excited for this conversation. It's going to be great.
So, in all honesty, this is our first time that we've ever filmed with this setup. It's been a bit of a shambles, to be honest, but we're going to go. I don't know where to look as well. I'm just like, do I look at the audience? Do I look at you? Anyway, we'll figure it out. But welcome. Thank you so much for coming on. I am so excited to have this conversation today because we were just talking before about the industry and about the work that you do. And I know that there's so many little areas that we're going to be able to tuck into today. But before we do, let's talk about 15 years in entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Like, that's where I want to start. I know most people start podcasts being like, let's go into the origin story. But talk about 15 years in entrepreneurship.
Well, yeah, you'll get my origin story from me talking about that. So, yeah, I've been an entrepreneur in some way, shape or form for the last 15 years.
Yeah.
I started in music. So I think that it's a very common misconception that independent artists aren't entrepreneurs. And I wouldn't have considered myself an entrepreneur when I was doing music. But now that I am an entrepreneur in, I guess, the traditional sense, I can sit here and tell you that that is 100% an entrepreneurial endeavor.
Oh, yeah.
Because the things that you have to do and be mindful of, and just even the grit that you require in order to just show up, not even be good, but just to do the thing as a musician is it's entrepreneur 101. Like, that's totally what it is. So I started off in in music, and that's something that I did since I was really, really young. So I booked my first gig when I was like 5. Like, I've been earning
when you were
super.
5.
Yeah, I've been earning super since I was 5. So I've been working for my whole life. So I've always been someone that's super driven and really just obsessed with career. That's just something I've always been really, really into ever since I was really young. So yeah, I started off as a musician. I was an independent artist. I had a band with my brother, so I wrote songs, and I still do that on some level. I actually have an EP probably coming out when this comes out.
That's so exciting. Do we get a little...
Yeah, I'll definitely give you guys a little
concert afterwards.
Yeah, I'll give you guys a little something. But so I did that, and it was great, and it was all I ever knew. But when things kind of started to take off, and they didn't even really take off, like, they took off in like the smallest way. Like, I was playing gigs and I got a manager and all these things. I don't know, I just wasn't really feeling as fulfilled as what I thought. It wasn't enough. And maybe the gratification wasn't quick enough. I don't know what it was, but something was just off.
Yeah.
And whilst I was being an independent artist, you have to have a job to fund that thing, because, by the way, it's also incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, what can I do where I can earn the most amount of money? I've never been to university, anything like that. And I'd been working in bars, and I was like, I can't be doing that. No more of that.
Those hours.
The hours, like, I was doing night shift. Like, I was still pulling in good money from that, but I was like, no, we're not doing that. So I ended up going into sales. I did this weird fucking pyramid schemey thing for 6 weeks because I just wanted to get out of being in hospitality. It was just, I don't even know what it was. I was literally there for 6 weeks.
I didn't know what I was selling, but I sold a lot.
Yeah, I was doing okay. And anyway, I had a family member who was in the automotive industry, and he was like, do you want to, are you good at selling? And I was like, yeah, I am. And he was like, cool, call this number if you want to get a job in automotive and do selling there. So anyway, one thing led to another, and I ended up working for Mercedes-Benz, which was crazy. And within 18 months, I went from being $25,000 in debt to earning $185,000 a year. It was nuts.
Damn.
Like it was nuts. And I remember looking at like my tax.
As a salesperson for
As
Mercedes?
a salesperson. So I was upselling. So I wasn't
Yeah.
selling cars. I was purely going in and upselling.
Like with the packages, the AMG packages and
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah,
right?
nice.
So I was going in and selling all these upsells, and my job was purely to retain profit
Yeah.
in the deal and in the business. And I actually did the math that during that time, and what I also think as well about the whole sales thing, and whilst I almost kind of attribute this to a little bit of entrepreneurship, they don't give you anything. Like they're like, this is your business within the business.
Yeah.
They're basically just giving you the leads.
Yeah.
That's it. So if I needed marketing material, if I wanted to change the marketing material, I was designing marketing material.
Within Mercedes-Benz.
Yes. I was like, we need to do this. Tell this person to change this. I think this is whatever. Like I was doing all of those things and obviously selling on top. Most of my selling was over the phone or over email. So this is where I started to like cut my teeth with like sales copy and all these types of things. And anyway, I was there for 5 years. It was really great. But I realized, I had made, I think between like 6 and 7 million personally for the company of profit over those 5 years.
Can we just pause on that for a second?
Yes.
Because there is just a little business lesson in this that I would like to point out for myself and then maybe for everyone watching. Upselling.
Upselling.
Downselling, upselling, side selling, cross-selling.
Yeah. And that's why I think I was able to grow my business, my online business quite quickly, is because I kind of had that mindset of going, don't leave money on the table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you need a payment plan for, and I don't know, this is just the way I work. I don't think this is for everybody, but I do think in the coaching industry, it's sort of like pay in full, do this, or that's it.
Yeah.
And to me, especially in this industry, if we're out here trying to help people, let's try and make it work. Like, let's have a conversation. You're entering into a relationship with somebody, especially if you're working with someone one-on-one, or something is live. I think if it's passive, it's a little bit different. But if you're doing a live program or you're asking, like someone wants to work with you one-on-one.
Or done for you,
Yeah, like having that conversation around, okay, like let's figure out a plan that works for you.
Yeah.
Like just because it's like not going to be perfect for them.
Yeah.
That is a reason why a lot of people don't buy, is because not that the price isn't right. Well, that is one thing I did learn, especially when you're working with people who are high earners. I was working with people who were millionaires like every day. And like price still does matter. It doesn't matter how much money you've earned. It's got to do with who the person is. And if that price doesn't feel right, or they don't feel like they're getting a deal, or they don't feel like they're special during the sale, they're just not going to say yes.
Can we talk about that for a second? Because I do see a lot in this space, obviously, the conversation that price doesn't matter at all. It's all about the energy. It's all about the brand association. It's all about the relationship and all of these things. And particularly what I see a lot of people saying is like, people want to work with me regardless of the price, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it creates this one way of doing business concept, as if like there's only one type of buyer, and that's the expressive buyer, the hype buyer that I talk about. But that's not representative. And as you're saying, like even people who are millionaires buying a Mercedes, there are still a subsection of people that are going to be looking at price. So when you hear people saying things like that, when you hear people saying like, oh, regardless of the price, with your background in business and seeing a wider perspective, like what would you say to a client who was like, I'm really struggling because, people are asking me about my prices. Am I doing something wrong?
I think people confuse ideal client for ideal buyer.
Yeah.
So you can have an ideal buyer that you're selling to. And I think especially in the online space, it is hard to consistently market to all of those people, especially if you don't want to do like consultation calls.
Yeah.
So that's fine if you want to direct your marketing towards an ideal client, which we all want to do. But are you directing it to an ideal buyer as well? And are you conscious of that because you are not selling to an ideal client, you're selling to a buyer?
Yeah.
And I think that we just aren't really taught that there's a difference between the two, because your ideal client, their brains all work differently.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're going to have an individual experience. So I know like for me, I'm not opposed to having consultation calls because I know that honestly, like I can tap into somebody's energy and I can sell to them in a more genuine and authentic way to what they need.
Yeah.
And I think that's what actually ended up being like the number one salesperson in Australia when I was like 24.
I love that.
And I was like,
I love
there
that.
were people like, we were getting calls from like other dealerships being like, can we send our people there and like shadow so they can shadow Jazz? And I'm like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just like being nice to people and selling them what they need.
Yeah.
So instead of saying like, you should just get the whole package because that's where the profit is.
Yeah.
I was saying, well, what do you need?
Yeah.
Rather than
This is what
pushing
you
them
should need.
into what the company wants me to sell so that I can, I don't know, be the best salesperson. I don't know, like whatever, get a pat on the back. Like it just, I was like, I just want to make sure that I'm consistently bringing in income. And so every time someone sat down with me at that job, I would just have a conversation with them and ask them like, okay, like let's figure out what you need. And I would say, okay, you don't need that.
Yeah.
Just do this.
Yeah.
And just simply saying that,
It builds trust.
it builds trust
100%.
and people were more likely to say yes to me. And at the time, I didn't really know what I was doing.
Yeah.
But looking back, that is an aligned sales strategy. Like I'm a Gemini who likes to talk, who likes to connect.
This is going to be a long podcast.
Yeah, and I'm also
Two Geminis on a couch.
I'm a Scorpio rising. So
Yeah.
I think for me, people can perceive me as a little bit intimidating, as a little bit prickly sometimes, and that's fine. But I sort of would use that to my advantage in ways. And I think as well, when people get that sense about me or they make that perception of me, and then they actually talk to me and the Gemini kicks in, it makes them feel like they know me even more.
They're in.
So it's been quite interesting having that transfer from, I've been in my business almost 4 years now, going on 4 years. So it's been really interesting to see how it transfers over.
What would you say, just while we're on that thought, because I love pragmatic, practical advice. For those listening, obviously you have such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to sales and such an incredible perspective because of that experience working with high ticket people before you've even entered into entrepreneurship. Not to oversimplify the whole process, but if you had to say, what would be the 3 sales lessons that you learnt through that experience that you now bring into your business?
Yeah, and I would say that it's not even just through that experience too. It's through what I learned in music as well. Like
of selling
that's,
yourself.
That's the one thing I will say is like it all built on top of each other. So I think it all helped me be an online personal brand because without that music stuff, I probably wouldn't have had the confidence to just like jump on Instagram live.
Yeah.
Like, because I knew how to be on stage and that's why people freak out and don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So I'll use it from the whole thing, but from a sales perspective, I think one is you can never judge like a book by its cover, right? Like there would be people that would come into Mercedes-Benz who are legitimate billionaires.
Yeah.
And they don't even have an iPhone.
Yeah.
And they're like wanting to take all the free cakes.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, you live in Vaucluse.
Yeah.
In like a $25 million mansion. Like I don't.
And you want a free cookie.
And you want a free cookie. Like you're having lunch here today. Like I don't get it.
That's a vibe.
Like,
That's
do you know
an
what I mean?
actual vibe.
So you never know. And also like you would never be able to tell that person has that money. So I think never judging a book by its cover, never assuming that someone can't afford something. Never assuming that someone can afford something. I think just actually having a genuine connection and being like, let's talk about it. I'm not assuming anything either way, no judgment. Because if you judge it, you're coming in with a preconceived notion and that's not going to help you actually sell, especially when you're actually talking to someone in the DMs, over voice note, whatever it is, however we do it in this industry. Number 2, I would say is like building rapport in some way. This is why I love what you do because it's like, what you're essentially doing through Instagram or through TikTok or a podcast or whatever, how can you build intimacy? Like you do need to have like, know, and trust. And I know that this is like sales 101, but how are you actually doing that? This is why I love podcasting so much.
Yeah.
Is because it is the easiest way, especially for a Gemini, it's like the easiest way to like create intimacy and create a relationship that doesn't actually feel parasocial to the client. So how are you utilizing content? How are you utilizing Instagram, all these different platforms, YouTube, whatever, to actually create like, know, and trust? And that way it never feels like, I mean, pardon the pun, but it's like you're never going in dry. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're just always making sure.
I like that example.
No, but it's true. Like, it's true though. Like, you can't just like, I was in the automotive industry. Like, I've seen horrific sales strategies before. And it's like, nobody likes to do that. Like, no one likes to be sold to. So if you can create as much of a genuine relationship as you possibly can, that's going to be great. And then I think the last one is just around like backing yourself and patience. And it's okay if somebody says no, right? Being confident in your product, being confident in your service, being confident that another opportunity will come along.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
Like, you know, that takes a lot of the pressure off, and you can allow yourself to, like, it's a trust game. It really, really is. And it's trust in what you've built, trust in your processes, your systems, trust in your clients, trust that if it's a no for someone on this, that it could be a yes on something else that you haven't even had an idea for yet that's going to drop in, who knows, 3 hours from now. Like, you never know when this inspiration is going to hit. So I think like the patience and the confidence piece is massive. And I don't think a lot of people attribute to sales, but if you're not, and this is where the alignment piece comes in, if you're not sure of who you are, if you're not selling in an aligned way that feels good for you and is ethical and is your way of doing things, how can you ever trust the process?
Yeah.
Because it's not actually your process. It's a carbon copy of someone else's success process. And whilst it might work to a certain degree, I can tell you right now, it might be scalable, but it won't be sustainable.
Yeah.
So you need to figure out your own way of doing things, because otherwise all of that stuff that I just said doesn't even matter.
Yeah. Oh, that's my favorite topic. I want to talk about that a little more, but you are also an expert. You have many facets to you.
I do.
In astrology, which is something we actually haven't talked a lot here on the podcast about. Now, we talk a lot about authenticity and branding and being yourself, but you said you had some unique insight into that balance between astrology and authenticity, and the fact that there might be something happening in the astrological plane. I don't know the right terminology to explain astrology, by the way, but I was on a live one day recently and someone talked about this, and then I asked you and you said, yes, this is the case. So what's happening astrologically that has to do with authenticity in business?
Yeah, so we've had a couple of really big shifts. So just so everyone like kind of gets, and I'll give you like, I'm very like pragmatic with astrology. So I'll give you kind of like the 411 on it. So we have the transits, right? That's what's happening in the sky currently. Like,
what's a transit?
So a transit is where the sun is. Like, you know how like right now we're in Aries season.
Yeah.
The reason we're in Aries season is because the sun is literally in the constellation of Aries. Like, this is not like this is in astronomy. There is a constellation called Aries, and that's where it is. So that's what dictates like the astrological seasons.
Yeah.
So the sun, as well as the moon and Mercury and Venus and every other fucking planet, they all transit through everything, right? Yeah. So right now we're having two major transit. We've just moved, Saturn has just gone into Pisces. So that's contributing a little bit to what you would have heard. But majorly we've got Pluto moving into Aquarius. So it's in Aquarius right now. It's moved out of Capricorn. Pluto stays in a sign for 15 years.
Yeah.
So what happened 15 years ago? The financial crisis.
Yeah.
Right? It moved into Capricorn and we had a financial crisis. What are we doing right now? We're going through a recession. Right? Like, it's like it's you can't make things up. Like, you can't make this stuff up. So anyway, with Pluto moving into Aquarius or coming out of Capricorn, Capricorn is very much like big pharma energy, big corporate energy. Yeah. We've seen the rise of a lot of these really, really big corporations over the last 15 years. Almost like another industrial revolution with like the rise of tech and all these sorts of things. and that hustle culture and that really masculine. But you know what I mean? Like it really has hyped up over the last 15 years. We're moving away from that. What we're moving into
the age of chillpreneur.
Well,
would you
kind
say?
of, because we're moving into the age of doing things your own way.
Yes.
Because Aquarius, a Capricorn is all about the rules, which is where we were with Pluto. Aquarius literally walks around like this and is like, fuck your rules, fuck everything. Great story, cool story, bro. Let's do it this way. What about this? What about that?
I'm an Aquarius rising.
Right? So we're getting a little bit of a peak of it because it's going to go back into Capricorn. It's going to retrograde.
Yeah.
But we are starting another 15-year cycle. So just over the next couple of months, just take notice and see where authenticity is being rewarded. Okay. Because Aquarius, at the end of the day, is about authenticity. It is about doing things your own way. It's about smashing glass ceilings. It's about progression. It's about futurism. It's about literally breaking the way and splitting off and doing things your own way. Aquarius can kind of be a little bit aloof because it just wants to like do its own thing. It's all about uniqueness and it's a visionary. Yeah. So if you aren't authentic to your vision, right? Aquarius actually sits on a polarity. There's like 6 polarities in astrology. The polarity is called the polarity of authenticity.
Yeah.
That and Leo. So if you are not doing what sets your heart on fire, and doing what you believe is right, and you're pretending in any way, or if you're playing small, so maybe you're doing it half-assed. You're not fully committing to what it is that you want to do. It's fine. Like, I'm not saying your business is going to burn to the ground, but you're missing out on an opportunity and you probably will fall behind because we're just going in this new direction where it's all about being authentic to who you are. And it's bigger than just like how your strategies, like what your strategies are and how you run your day. It's like, what's the mission? What's the purpose? What's the greater thing outside of you? You actually asked me a question when we were in our mentorship of like, I think you actually pose this in Influencer Vibes as well. It's like, okay, cool. Like the personal mission of your business, like that's great. But what does that mission contribute to? Mm-hmm. Like what's the greater movement that mission contributes to?
How does it change the world?
That your name is not really connected to.
Yeah.
So like, we haven't really been taught to think about that yet. We've been like, oh, I just want to help people connect. It's like, that's not going to cut it. It's like, I know, like what I do is like, I'm destigmatizing the use of spiritual principles in business so that we can all be successful and people aren't in poverty.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's got nothing to do with my name.
Yeah.
So I think
it's a big, and it's got complexities and different avenues, and it's like all of the contribution, you're doing yours from the spiritual business perspective, but then
someone else will do it from another way, right? And it's like we're all
contributing
in service to something that's so much bigger than all of us.
Yeah.
And that's what Pluto moving into Aquarius is, because Pluto is the planet of transformation. So there's going to be some death and rebirth through all of this, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because it's actually to empower you and renew you.
When you say death and rebirth, what would that look like for someone in business?
Yeah. So again, it's happening to all of us. So it could look different for everyone. And I would, if you really want to go into this, like pull up your chart and see where Aquarius is. So for you, for example, this will be moving through your ascendant.
Yeah.
So you're not just going to be going through a personal, you're not just going to be going through like maybe a business transformation, and it's definitely affecting business for sure, and how we just move generally in the world, but it's going to personally affect you with like your identity and like a whole new beginning.
Going through this.
So when you said,
I feel like I'm just coming out of my sad girl era,
right? And that actually makes a lot of sense. I'd love to like see
like the last 6 months, particularly, I've like spoken about it quite a lot. That it really has been, as we talked about before, a little bit of comparison and all of that kind of stuff. Like, but identity's been the biggest thing. Like every day being like, who the fuck am I, to be honest?
Exactly.
And what am I doing?
Yeah. So, and it is this moment of like, how do I do things my own way? Yeah. Because you're an Aquarius, like you have that Aquarius rising. Yeah. So I think you it's going to impact everybody in a different way for sure. But my biggest thing is like, do not shy away from a big mission.
Yeah.
And it's almost like without it, like, I feel like there was a time on Instagram where you didn't really have to have like branding, that there was that, like, you could kind of just like do whatever. And we've just moved past that. It's going to be like that when it comes to like big mission. You know, we're seeing it with like sustainability and like being like inclusive. You know, we're seeing these big corporate entities really starting to care about that stuff, having wellness budgets, having stuff like that. It's about to go even further, and they're going to be like, okay, well, what's the purpose of your wellness budget? Why is it that you actually support trans lives? You know, you say that you do, but where's the evidence?
Yeah.
We're going to be looking for proof in the pudding about what it is that you truly believe.
Right, because that was one of the things that got brought up, was like, it's not just about doing the thing, but it's like that proof behind it. And the person who brought it up to me, I don't know if this is the best example, but they were like, you know, even the Selena and the drama that's got the Hailey Bieber stuff, like, it's all happening, but like there will be, basically this person said, like, there will be call for like receipts and stuff. And you'd mentioned something before about just like the money screenshots and everything like that. Like, I want to talk more about how practically for the listeners, like, how can they ensure that they're in, because you talk a lot about integrity and ethical business practices. Like, how can they ensure that they are in integrity in their business and that they are coming with the proof, as you can like say, behind the mission?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, to be honest, I'm like just as in it as everybody else, right? Like, I will say that. But one thing that I'm sort of noticing is, and I just felt this intuitively, is like, I was kind of like, it feels a little tone deaf right now to just be sharing your income as a marketing tool.
Without
like
context.
Like if you're doing like a video about, like, I know you have a video because I've like watched all your videos, but like you have a video like, I did a $40,000 a month. Here's how I did it. Like, that makes sense. But just to be like, 100K cash month, like, want to coach with me one-on-one and have this too, like, I don't know, like, it just, that's just, it's not going to be inspiring anymore.
I laugh about this. I'm sorry, but I just need to say this because it's really funny. I play this out in my head all the time about, like, I do this little game when I see people doing that, and then I'm like, can you imagine if like Coles is like a big supermarket here, was like, today we made $5 million, come and get our specials. Like, I'm like, there's no other business in the world that's like, here's how much money we made. This is the stuff. But like in the online space, regardless of whether you're a health mentor or whether you're a business mentor or spiritual mentor, even like I've seen like relationship experts being like, this is how much money I made. I'm like, I don't fucking care. I want you to help me have better sex with my partner. I don't care how much money you make.
Exactly. No, I'm the same. It's like, I'm not hiring you because of how much money you made. Like, I'm hiring you to, you know, help me XYZ. Like, even if you are a wealth coach, for example, here's the thing though, and this is why I don't understand how, well, I know why it works, is because it speaks to people's scarcity and it's disempowering.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, if it's actually not inspiring in that way. So you have to be able to go, and this is the other piece too that I will say before I say anything. There is a part of me that's like, we should be sharing our income. If we can destigmatize wealth, especially for women, like I'm so passionate about that. I'm a feminist through and through. Like, I do want to share my income because I don't think that we should be not talking about income. Like, it's fucked up. Like, why are we pretending that, or playing down how much money we're earning? That's dangerous too. Like, so I think it is a fine line.
But there's context.
But there has to be context. And I think using it as a marketing tool is just not, it's a bit tone deaf.
Yeah.
It's coming off, it's giving tone deaf. So
it's in its tone deaf era.
You know?
I've seen a lot as well of clients that have come into my space actually feeling, like you said, disempowered is such a great word for that, because what I see the negative side of it. I'm with you. I want more people to celebrate income and for it to just be normal to talk about income with context. You know, this is how much it costs to operate this business. This is what I'm investing this money in. This is my philanthropic efforts, or this is how I'm enjoying my life. You know what I mean? It's like, I was able to do this and this is how my life has changed. The story makes the sharing of the income so much less tone deaf, in my opinion. But the problem I see with it is a lot of people share these big income without any context of how they got there, which my mission in this world is to give people a platform to change the world, right? That conversation that you and I had in our mentorship, like I truly believe that. Play your role in the world changing. That's why we're here. And we all have something inside of us. But there are people who see other people sharing their income without context, who have a mission inside of them, who have immediately labeled themselves as failures because they aren't achieving that as fast as somebody else did. And then they give up on that mission because they already have determined that they've failed at business.
I'm going to assume that people like are ignorant to the understanding of what sharing your income without context does.
Yeah.
Just because I'm going to always assume the best in people. But what you're actually doing when you don't share your income when you share it without context is you're actually insinuating or inviting somebody into a comparative moment. So me versus them, they have that, I don't. And they're comparing themselves to you. And through that comparison, they go, well, I got to learn from this person. And then they buy from you.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine. They'll buy from you. But the quality of that client, the quality of like where they are in their journey in order to actually get results, they're in a comparisonitis spiral. So before you do any work with them, you're going to have to get them out of that, remembering who they are so they actually can go and get results for you and it reflects positively on your business. So we need to be having conversations with ourselves. This is why I have my podcast. It's to have a deeper conversation with yourself about why you do the things that you do. And again, if you've done that, it's no shade, no shame. Like it's totally fine. Yeah. It's a learnt behavior. You've probably been told to do that in some way, shape or form. But this is where it's not a one size fits all. And I think looking at how you spend your money, how you share your money, and creating a strategy that actually works best for you from a soul perspective and what your soul came here to be, but also just like what fucking feels good.
Yeah.
You know, I just got a feeling that sharing my income was feeling really tone deaf. So I just stopped.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I made that decision probably like 4 months ago. I just stopped, probably actually a bit longer. I stopped sharing. And I thought to myself, okay, well, I'm a feminist. I want to keep sharing my income. I want women to be talking about money. That's really important to me. Where can I do it? And I've been sitting on this idea for ages. I've decided I'm going to start a membership through my podcast, Extra Content. If you want the behind the scenes of my business and how much we're making and all these sorts of things, we're going to do it in a private community of people who know me and the context and all the things, you know, where I don't have to do a million disclaimers.
Every time you post something.
Exactly.
Because by the way, I've been doing this for 6 years.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Yeah. So I'm creating a space where that will go. Yeah. And so I wonder what that is for you in your business.
Yeah. Taking the step back, what I really liked that you said is like, I just stopped. Like, it's not like I kept doing it and trying to figure out. I paused for a moment. I went inwards, waited for that inspiration like you were talking about before, and then actually acted on an idea.
And I will say that's an aligned strategy for me.
Yeah.
That's not going to work for everyone. There are, again, like, so I call them laws of success. Like, there are some things that are just like true across the board. But like when I work with clients, sometimes that's stopping. They actually need to be constantly experimenting and just moving. If you have like a lot of fire energy or a lot of air energy or whatever, you might need to ask your audience or whatever. But for me and my chart, and like it's my rising sign, it's my Saturn in Pisces, I need to go within and just sort of like take a moment and witness and watch and stop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it's also tapping into how you work as well.
I love talking to you about business. Like, again, when we had our time together, I was so inspired by the connection that we both have on, you know, business being so personal.
Yes.
Mine is from a very pragmatic perspective, and you obviously bring you have that pragmatic side, but bring a lot of spiritual flair to it. Mm-hmm. Because I think where we both severely agree is that it is so fucking nuanced. Like somebody's pathway to success when it comes to building a business, a personal brand, product development, marketing strategy, sales strategies, even the way you run a team or administration, like it's so nuanced and it's such a personal journey. But I'd like to talk a bit about like how can people dig into that using spiritual tools? Like how can people get to know themselves more so that they aren't just being like, let me just drag and drop this coach's templates and strategies and systems and personality into my business because they've made 100K and that's what I want to do as well. Like, what does that journey look like using spiritual tools, potentially esoteric entrepreneurship, as well as astrology, so that they can fine-tune their business so it truly is authentic to them?
Yeah. So this is what esoteric entrepreneurship is the commitment, the decision, the devotion. I like the word commitment, but the devotion to moving that way in business and in life. Yeah. Right. And what we're really talking about here is a dedication and a devotion to self. To
I got goosebumps on that
like we're talking about doing things your own way and carving your own path and honoring what your soul came here to do. And I'm not talking about this from like a religious sense. I'm talking about this from a pragmatic sense of like you're really not here for no reason. Unfortunately, like if we look at like nature, things don't just pop up in nature for no fucking reason. Yeah. Like we have a food chain. Yeah. Like if the bees die, we all die. Like your life has an impact.
Everything is here.
Regardless of thinking about it from a spiritual perspective. And I like to be able to get pragmatic. My boyfriend's a scientist, so like I'm able to like we vibe a lot. We vibe a lot, so I can nut these sort of like concepts out. But this is esoteric entrepreneurship, is this devotion of showing up not only for yourself, but for your role in the world. Yeah. And that's when we can start to talk about, okay, well, what do I need to do? What are the laws of success? And then what I like to call the path of success.
What are the laws of success?
Yeah, so the laws of success are actually really, really simple. And I'll share a quick story about this because I actually staying at a friend's house right now. I've never read Think and Grow Rich, and it just happened to be on her bookshelf. I picked it up and I read it. I could just picked out a page, and it was this page that was like sentence to sentence. It was perfect, and it was talking about persistence, and it was saying how the way that you become successful is persistence. That's it. And I've been thinking a lot about patience lately and being like, oh, I've just got to be patient. It's actually not patience. It's persistence. Yeah. Because patience is waiting. Yeah. Persistence is doing and being patient. Right? Like there's an action.
I like that.
Right? It's actually persistence. Sticking. And he actually goes through, there's 4. But he basically like listed these 4 laws, the 3 laws of success basically that I was talking about, plus a 4th, which I'll add in maybe. But the laws of success are action, attraction, and consistency. And I would actually probably add, after reading that last night, proximity. Yeah. So what are you doing? Like, what are you actually doing? Like, what are you...
The business.
Yeah, like, what are you selling? What are you whatever? Yeah. How are you moving the needle? 2, attraction. So who are you being? So law of attraction, right? Like, how are you showing up? What's your relationship with self?
What's your vibration?
What's your vibration? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? What are your limiting beliefs? Who are you being in this moment, right? Consistency. How often are you doing it? Are you doing it on a consistent basis?
Is that where the persistence fits in?
Yes. Yeah. So how are you actually making sure that you're not giving up, and no matter what, is again this devotion, right? And you're consistent with whatever it is that you're doing. And then the proximity piece, which Napoleon Hill had in this, was who's around you? Yeah. Who's in your inner circle and who's not? So like also thinking about, okay, well, who's having a negative impact on your persistence? Who's telling you, oh, maybe you should think about that. Maybe don't go too quick. Or maybe you're not going quick enough. You're not this, you're not that. Getting rid of those people and making sure you have people in your circle that, ignite that engine, right? Fan the flame.
Would that also be proximity to who we're consuming?
Yes.
So those who are
everything.
putting us into that comparison cycle or
Yep.
shame or
Everything.
guilt.
So that looks like a coach, a therapist, a fucking masseuse, your boyfriend,
Yeah.
whoever the fuck, right? Like
Everyone.
who you're following on Instagram, who's in your proximity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So those are the laws to success. If you don't do those, you will not be successful. Like you need to do them.
Yeah.
Right? And I think sometimes we think success is way more complicated than that.
Simple.
Right? From there,
Yeah.
everything else is your way.
Yeah.
So my favorite thing that I say to all my clients, my audience all the time is all the strategies actually fucking work. Every single one of them works.
It just depends who they work for.
Is it going to work for you?
Yeah.
And the way that I use spirituality and astrology is really through self-inquiry of going, okay, firstly, what feels good for you? Then I use astrology because that's my favorite spiritual modality. Let's have a look at your chart because your chart is a reflection of what your soul came here to be.
Yeah.
It's actually not a reflection of who you are.
Yeah.
It's your potential, basically. Yeah. So let's look at this and how can we lean into these placements inside your business, of course. So from how you sell to how you market to how you brand to how you lead a team to everything. Yeah. And then also outside of that. So the way that you think, the way that you behave, the way that you connect, the way that you relationship, the way that you exercise, the way that you, how can we use this as a tool and a touchstone? And I want to be very, very clear about that. I'm not someone who's like, your chart or nothing.
Yeah.
It's a touchstone that we come back to when we lose sight of who we are.
Right.
So it's always like a jumping off point for me. We never want to stay there because then we're just a slave to a dogma and like, fuck that.
Yeah.
So it's a jumping off point when you're like, oh my God, I don't know how I feel. I don't know what I want. I don't know what's right for me. This is a place where you can come back to, or you can come to an astrologer and say, I've lost sight of this and I need some new ideas of maybe how I could express this placement, because even with all those placements, there's a million different ways that you can express them.
The nuance.
Because they also connect.
Yeah.
Like, again, this is like a little bit deeper, but they all connect to each other. They're all having conversations with each other. And that is so specific to each person. It is literally got the same like stats as DNA. Like it's that specific.
Wow.
Like no one has the same chart as you.
Yeah.
Just because someone's an Aquarius as well as you, it's not the same
Like,
person.
the
Even if you're
twins.
twins, it's not the same thing, because also your life experience is going to impact the expression of that chart too.
Yeah.
Like life experience, it impacts the expression of genes. Like it's the same thing.
Yeah. The biology of belief. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think looking at your path to success, that is where you have to get completely individual. And if I was to give you like from a business perspective, the 1, 2, 3 on it, it's
I was going to say, how does this like not become overwhelming for someone?
Yeah. So first place you want to look at is what's called your cardinal cross.
Yeah.
So when I do my business astrology intensives, this is the first thing that I look at, and I'm like, okay, where in their business are they in and out of alignment with these placements? So your cardinal cross is your ascendant. That's like the first one. Opposite that, you have your IC. You have your descendant on the other side. You have your IC down the bottom, and then you have your midheaven up the top.
Okay.
And it's literally across,
right?
Yeah. And if you look on astrology chart, you'll literally see it's like an emboldened line, like you'll see it.
Yeah.
So whatever signs those lines point to, those are the signs that are in your cardinal cross. So very simply, we're going to do this in layman's terms. Your rising sign is basically like your branding. So it's like how other people perceive you when someone's seeing you online.
So for me, that's Aquarius. That's that, like you said, I'm going to
you're going to do whatever I want. So you have Dancepreneur, you've got Chillpreneur, you've got like fucking
more movements.
Become the coolest person you know. Like that's very Aquarius energy, right?
Okay, cool.
So then you have that on one side. You also have on the other side, which is your descendant. That's kind of like how you are in relationships. So when we look at it from a business perspective, it's like how you are with your team, how you are with your clients. Like when someone's entering into, like they've passed the paywall, they're actually in connection with you, that is going to be the place where whatever sign that is, that's like the energy you want to lean into, the archetype that you want to kind of stand into. Then,
so your leadership kind of?
Yeah, leadership, but also like it's a connection moment. It's a partnership placement. So I like to think of it, put it this way. Ascendant is PR, descendant is HR. So it's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's the sort of energy you're going to look at.
That's cool.
So it's basically like your internal human relations.
Yeah.
So then down in your IC, that's the most private point in your chart. No one else in your business is going to see this. This is how you manage yourself.
Yeah.
So think about like, maybe it's more like CEO-ship. So it's like the way that you manage yourself, the way that you talk to yourself, the way that you connect with yourself, how you lead yourself. It's a very, very private point in your chart. So maybe like your inner work, what you need to be stepping into, the energy you need to be stepping into to get the most out of your inner work.
How you are off camera.
When you're like in planning, creation mode, that's that energy. And then right at the top is your midheaven. That's the highest point in your chart. They call it your fame point. So if I was to see you on television or on a TED Talk or anything like that, we're going to be seeing you in that midheaven. So I like to think of it as like your outer authority.
Yeah.
Your inner authority is your IC, your outer authority,
Yeah.
how you're perceived in your industry.
HR, inner, outer.
Yeah.
I love it.
How you're seen in your industry, what you're known for, what you're going to go down in history for. Like we're talking big energy, like big stuff.
That's cool.
So looking at those placements and just being like, how much of a connection do I have with that archetype in that area of my business? Where are the gaps?
And then are these signs? So then you would take like the energy of
the
those signs.
archetype. So how can you step into that archetype in each of those areas?
The characteristics of the sign. Yeah, okay, cool.
Basically, yeah. And that's the first place I would say to look. Because if that's out of alignment, we can go through all the houses and the fucking planets. They're all that's the minutia.
Yeah.
And that's what I do in the intensive. I go through and do like a full blueprint of that with you, and that's where we get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
But if that stuff isn't worked out or isn't feeling good on some level, then it doesn't really matter. The rest of it's kind of going to fall to shit, and you're just not going to be in alignment in a way that actually feels authentic to you.
And then that goes back to the conversation we had before about what's happening on a global scale about the authenticity. If we can kind of check these boxes as well as have that personal connection to ourselves, then we're going to be able to move through this quite easily.
It's not about being perfect. Like your chart is a static image. Like you're going to have the same chart when you're fucking 90.
Yeah.
So it's not about being perfect. It's just about how can I lean into this? Am I even leaning into it at all? How can I double down? What can I double down on to deepen this?
Yeah.
And really, if you're a leader of your own business, especially if you're the product of your own business, this stuff matters even more. Like you're not selling like a $2 product on Instagram, on Amazon that only cost you 50 cents. Like you're usually the face of your brand. I know that's like your audience. So this stuff it matters. And the reason I preach it so much is because this is what I did in order to become successful. And people ask me all the time, how did I do it so quickly?
Yeah.
It's because I'm in alignment.
Yeah.
And I know who I am, and I know what feels good, and I know what doesn't. And I have this cool fucking tool that doesn't rule my life, but I can come back to it and be like, okay, I've lost my way. Let me come back to my truth.
I got a visual in my head. I think I heard it in a YouTube video years ago. It's like the difference, let's say you're in a boat in a stream, it's the difference between going upstream and downstream. Like obviously trying to row a boat upstream against the current can be so difficult, which is how most people are running their business, trying to implement everybody else's strategies, replicate what everybody else is doing. Yes, it might work financially, but the feeling that comes from that can be life-threatening in many cases. People get sick
I've been talking about this, and this is where like the esoteric entrepreneurship, and this all wraps back in. One of the core pillars of esoteric entrepreneurship is sustainable success. I don't give a fuck if you can scale your business and make millions of dollars if you're depressed when you get there, because guess what? Like, I'm not just saying like your mental health, like, yeah, of course, but like if you have a shitty relationship to money, it actually doesn't stop you making money.
Yeah.
It actually is going to stop you maybe from keeping it or having it, allowing it to feel satiating and satisfying.
Yeah.
If you have a shitty relationship with it. And that's where like success is great. Everybody can be successful. I believe that to my core, if we all stop trying to copy and think that there's one way of getting there.
Yeah.
But if you are not working on yourself and you're not actually looking at your values, what you need at the time,
Yeah, because
there are negative impacts of growth. Growth means that things are shifting and changing. Your environment is going to be impacted.
Yeah.
And you are also your environment. So how do we make sure that we're looking at the negative impacts, which are inevitable? People, more money, more problems. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's a thing. But how do we distribute our gifts and our energy and our talents and, you know, our services and our businesses and our mission and our products in a way that is sustainable? That's not doing it slow necessarily. That's doing it in a way that doesn't mean we fuck up the environment.
Yeah.
And that might mean
acclimatize in the process.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what sustainable success is about. It's about making sure that you don't self-abandon and actually you optimize who you are through the process of growth rather than abandon, which everybody does most of the time. Like, I've done it. I learned that the hard way. And I'm just trying to do this now so that people stop doing that, because we think that there's only one way to be successful, and it's wrong. It's inherently wrong. It's capitalist bullshit that we've been sold, and it's not your fault. Yeah. But like, listen to me now. Like, you have to do it your own way. Otherwise, you're going to end up in somebody else's version of success. Like, this is keeping up with the Joneses. This is everything that Gary Vee's like banging on about to all of us for so long. Like, I hope that you can hear it from this perspective. And this is why I speak to spiritual entrepreneurs, because I don't think that there is somebody who is like the Gary Vee of spiritual entrepreneurs. And that's like my mission of like, he's talking to like the hustle bros. Yeah. And like, also like, you know, a lot of other people love him, but that's his target. And I just want to be telling people who are spiritual, like, you don't have to wait, you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that, you just have to do things your own way. Oh my God. Don't listen to a fucking guru, be your own guru, you know?
I don't think we can go on from there. That was the biggest drop the mic. They're attached to my face, but oh my gosh, I could sit here and listen to you talking for hours. I was just like, talk to me more. But honestly, that was incredible. You mentioned in this about your membership, and then you also mentioned about your sessions that you do. Tell us a little bit more about, because I'm all ready to invest. I'm sure everyone else is. I've got my credit. Like, go get my credit card. But tell us all the things, how people can connect with you.
Yeah. So obviously the best place to find me is on Instagram. That's where everything is. If you want to jump into my world, the most accessible way to do that is to definitely come over to the podcast so you can listen. Obviously, you can hear I say some pretty wild shit, and this is like tame because I'm like on somebody else's podcast, so we get even wilder just on the regular pod. But in the membership, I'm really going hard because, as I said, if you want my wild thoughts, we have like little masterclasses in there, we have horoscopes in there, we have discounts and stuff. Like, it's going to be a really, really great place for you to just get extra education, extra knowledge, extra wisdom, and a lot of the behind the scenes of my business. It's where I do a lot of my like little op-eds, my opinion pieces.
Yeah, I love that.
And, you know, my podcast and everything that I do is really about having a deeper conversation with yourself. And then obviously, if you would like me to support you after you've had that deeper conversation with yourself and use my skills and my gifts, you can come and work with me. So a great place to jump in if you want to work with me one-on-one is the Business Astrology Intensive, because it's 30 days. 2 of those weeks, I'm doing all the work, you just chill. Yeah. And then we have like a call and then Voxer support and another follow-up call. So just to make sure that, you know, you have everything that you need to keep moving forward. But it's really cool. We give you an astrology blueprint, and it's like a little audio book. So it's just like, it's really cool. Like,
she's a business creative.
Yeah. So it's really fun, and it's a great place to start if you really just want to like fucking do this. And but yeah, there's plenty of programs and things always going on in my world. So those are great places to start. But come hang out with me on the pod if you want more of this energy. Yeah. And on Instagram.
Thank you so much. Honestly, I deeply appreciate it. I love this conversation. Thank you to everyone who did listen. Make sure you go follow Jazz. We'll have all of her information linked below, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.